Hi, 8th grade. I'm just going to go over chapter 14, section 2, and talk to you guys a little bit about what is going to be on your quiz for this section. So, as we talked about in section 1, the North and the South are fighting a lot about slavery. In section 2, you learned about the Compromise of 1850, which was one of the things that our government did to try and keep the peace between the North and the South and kind of deal with this issue of slavery. So what you need to know, first of all, we have the Compromise of 1850. So this was the legislation that was passed that was trying to basically make the North and the South happy. So one of the things that was part of this that pleased the North was that all slave trade would be banned in Washington, D.C. So no longer would anyone be allowed to buy or trade slaves in our nation's capital. Something that also made the southern states happy was part of the Compromise of 1850 was the Fugitive Slave Act was passed. And part of that is basically what it said is it gave the southern states more power to go into the north and capture any slaves that had escaped and tried to get to freedom. What was controversial about this is there really wasn't a lot of evidence that was needed to prove that someone was a slave. So pretty much these people that came into the North looking for slaves could pretty much say that any African American person was the escaped slave, and there really was little that they could do to try and prove that no, they weren't the escaped slave that they were being accused of being. Alright, some of the things that are going on during this time. So, a lot of people in the North are very upset about slavery, and there's a couple of things that happen to try and bring more attention to the plight of slavery and to encourage people to be more against it. So one of these people is Harriet Beecher Stowe. So she wrote a book called Uncle Tom's Cabin. And Uncle Tom's Cabin was all about an enslaved man who's abused by his master and how awful slavery is. So a lot of people read this book not really knowing much about slavery and thought, oh no, I can't believe this is what slavery is like. Of course we shouldn't have slaves. Well, the Southerners who owned slaves thought that this was just a case of propaganda. And it was created to falsify what slavery was really like and just meant to spread rumors about slavery. So people had very strong feelings about this book either way. As we all know, slavery is horrible and awful no matter what's going on. So while all this is going on, we also have the issue of Kansas and Nebraska. So you can see on this map here, we have a lot of territory that haven't become states yet. And Kansas and Nebraska want to join the Union. So Senator Stephen Douglas, he pushes the Kansas-Nebraska Act through Congress. And basically what that says is that the people living in these two territories will just have to vote and decide whether they want slavery or not. If they vote for slavery, it'll be a slave state. If they don't vote for slavery, it'll be a free state. And basically, he completely undoes the Missouri Compromise. Because remember, in our previous chapter, the Missouri Compromise basically said that any territory in the northern areas would automatically be free, and then any territory in the southern areas could have slavery. So basically, this just undoes the Missouri Compromise, which was another thing that was passed to try and make the slave owners and people against slavery happy. So, Kansas and Nebraska get to decide whether they want to have slavery or not. Well, this turns into a big, literal, bloody mess. So, specifically in Kansas, pro-slavery groups of people are fighting for control against people who are against slavery, and it ends up being this really violent time in Kansas. There's groups of pro-slavery people that are attacking anti-slavery people, and then anti-slavery people are attacking in response to that. And it's just a very, very scary time to be living in Kansas. John Brown specifically is a case of an anti-slavery group being very violent. So John Brown, he was an anti-slavery activist from Kentucky. He takes a small group of men to a pro-slavery area in Kansas, and he attacked them and actually murdered 5 people. So there's a lot of violence in Kansas right now. It's very, very bloody. So that's everything that you guys need to know for your quiz on section 2. I am going to post this in PDF form as well. Don't forget to use these reviews on your quizzes. Some of you, I think, are just rushing through them and you're not getting a very good grade. So make sure you use the reviews on the quiz. That's the whole point, so you can do well on them. Okay? Your quiz is going to be all multiple choice questions. I believe it's 7 multiple choice questions. So pay attention to what you put, because some of them are a little bit more than others. There's 8 multiple choice questions. So because there's only 8 questions, some of them are 15 points and some of them are 10. Tried to make the easier ones 15 points, but as long as you use the PDF, you should do fine. If you guys have any questions, let me know. Email me. I hope everybody's healthy and well.